Hi, I'm Brandon Poe, founder of Poe Group Advisors and creator of the Accounting Practice Academy. You are listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast, where we talk about stuff in the accounting world. If you're looking to buy or sell a practice, we are the premier accounting practice intermediary firm in the industry. Check us out at pogroupadvisors.com. If you're a firm owner looking to build a more profitable practice while actually reducing owner hours, sign up for our practice management workshop, which only runs a few times per year. Learn more at accountingpracticeacademy.com. Well, Brad, welcome to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. For our guest, Brad Stevens is a lifetime entrepreneur, and he's currently the founder and CEO of Outsource Access. And that's an offshore virtual services firm that he built to over 300 staff in just 22 months. And he's targeting 500 staff in 3 years by the end of this year, 2021. He walks the walk with expertise on scaling, automation, outsourcing, and high-performance virtual teams. He's also a global speaker through his firm, BST International, sharing stages with John Maxwell and Deepak Chopra. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
And you've spoken for YPO, Vistage, Sage, and over 50 EO chapters globally. EO stands for Entrepreneurs Organization. He has a podcast, Automate and Delegate, What You Should Not Be Doing. So, Brad, welcome to our podcast. One thing I want to add too, I didn't realize you're a graduate of Wharton Business School. That's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I did my undergrad actually there, and it was a great experience. I definitely took a lot of, as an entrepreneur, there's certain things you learn in the classroom, and a lot of it you don't learn in the classroom.
Yeah.
So, to your point, honestly, the accounting and marketing, kind of marketing is a lot of common sense, but a lot of the fundamentals and frameworks to think about in marketing I had a lot of value of. And then accounting, I mean, I always tell every entrepreneur, you have got to get a handle. You don't have to know all the depths and nuance of every debit and credit, but just understanding how to build a financial model, the difference between variable fixed costs.
Yeah.
So many entrepreneurs get caught up in the dream of the vision of the idea and never, a year later, this was never going to make money. I forgot to put a pencil to that.
Yeah. And I don't think accountants know. I mean, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, Brad. So you and I both serve as presidents of EO, and we've been in EO, and we're in forum every month with entrepreneurs from all different walks of life, different industries. And my experience has been, I'm surprised at how many entrepreneurs don't know their numbers. They're not aware of the drivers of their business. And there are some smart ones that do, don't get me wrong, but I'm surprised by when I encounter people that don't, I'm always a little surprised by that.
Yeah. I mean, well, if you look at the personality profile of most entrepreneurs, they aren't, they're more sales and marketing personalities, right? They're highly optimistic. They're all about, 9 new shiny balls. I'd rather start 12 new things before I finish. They're not detail oriented. And as we know, for those of us that really appreciate things like what you guys do with Strategic Coach, we do EOS, they actually have a role for that. It's like, you're the visionary, you get to start all the new shiny balls, and you have an integrator that's behind you to kind of do the detail and infrastructure. And so, most personality profiles of entrepreneurs tend to be that sales and marketing kind of sales type, and those folks, they get to the 4th cell on an Excel document and they glazed over, and they've now got 9 new shiny balls they want to start.
Yeah.
So it's
and I think accountants, I mean, from my experience in working with CPAs, is they don't really understand that as well as I think they should, because and I could go off on a tangent here, but entrepreneurs need the CPA to kind of help make it simple, make the numbers simple.
Very important. And just being able to know the difference between fixed and variable expense. I mean, that's one of the biggest fundamentals when I'm working with the help, trying to mentor a startup entrepreneur, is like, just get your chart of get you a nice little simple 12-month pro forma. I set up your revenue variables, your expense variables, so you can kind of play around with those that drive through, and just get a handle on variable versus fixed, so you know what your true gross margin is and how can you leverage your fixed expense. And just so many people, they just lump all their expenses together, and they never know what are the true ones that move 1-to-1 with every dollar in terms of variable expense versus fixed, and how do you separate those out to really know where you're making money and losing money. And then separating out your product lines and knowing you've got one hemorrhaging and another one that's having to subsidize it, and being able to parse that out, kind of appropriately.
Yeah.
So balance sheet is another thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle wrapping their whole head around, is a balance sheet and how do those tie together. But if phase one, if they can at least get a solid 12-month pro forma with well broken out variable versus fixed costs, you can see where the cash accumulates and it all takes care of itself on the balance sheet. But
Yeah,
getting a handle on that.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Well, let me back up and just kind of ask you, how did you get into outsourcing? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you started into that business.
Sure. Yeah, it's I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. After graduating college, the company I was going to work for ended up going under about 2 weeks before I was supposed to start. I was actually going down the more finance. I was going to work with an investment bank here in Atlanta, getting back to the warm weather back in the South after I'd been up in Philly for quite a number of years. And it's going to call Robertson Stevens. Some folks may be familiar with. No relation to me. It's with a PH. The Stevens that don't spell it quite right. But they're big in the tech sector. Some folks may remember they took E-Trade public. They were big back in the day. And I graduated back in 2002. And I was getting my big investment banking job back in Atlanta, make investment banking money in Atlanta cost of living. And about 2 weeks before I was supposed to start, they went under. And it was a surprise to me and everybody that was in that office, because they were surprised. I was supposed to, their headquarters in San Francisco, and I was about to fly out to do my training. But I got 3 months severance pay and got to keep my signing bonus. I never worked a day for the company. So walked away with like 20 grand and never worked a day for the company. I was like, well, I'm just gonna make a career out of finding the next failing, company out there and just keep stacking up cash here in my 20s. But I share that joke, and sorry, I do a ton of speaking and always kind of share that. But it's it's this fork in the road experiences in life, And so I had an opportunity. Had my nice guy I was going to share apartment with, living up in Atlanta, the Buckhead life, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, and so I had some other job offers on the table I could take, but I knew I wanted to do the entrepreneurial path. I was going to take that path, and so chose that path. So tucked my tail, moved back in with my parents down in Fayette County, south of the airport, and started my first business at that point. And so it was actually with my uncle in the medical pharmaceutical space. And since then, I've just built multiple companies in different industries. And my last business kind of led me to the outsourcing world. We manufactured and distributed teeth whitening products. I had a partner in that business, and we had a dental division and a beauty division. So we sold professional whitening systems to dental offices. You could go and get professional whitening done. And we also had a separate brand that we sold to beauty and spas and salons for whitening products that they could sell. And we had this one product called our Chick Flick pen. It was a double-sided, had teeth whitening gel on one side, lip gloss on the other side. We sent about 50,000 units. Women loved this product. I worked with a manufacturer in Taiwan. It was a high-end manufacturer. They did the work for some of the very high-end cosmetic brands that are out there. And so we had a lot of success. This is just one of the many products that we had, but it had little mini LED lights in it. Women loved it. It was lip gloss, teeth whitener you could brush on your teeth, and a little flashlight inside your purse.
Swiss Army of lipstick, huh?
Yeah, it was. It had all different features. And so I think we had 40 or 50,000 units, been really successful with it. The next batch we ordered, so the manufacturer in Taiwan would do all the components and put the lip gloss portion in and then ship it to our manufacturer in California, who would do the final teeth whitening gel, put that piece in, put it in the box, and then we'd ship it to all of our clients. Well, little did we know that one of the manufacturers, suppliers changed the bioadhesive glue that held the little brush onto the stem on the part that had the teeth whitening gel in it. So what would happen is they would fill that teeth whitening gel on that last batch we did of about 10,000 units. And it wouldn't happen immediately, but after about 2 months, it would start building gas and it would explode. So we basically set 10,000 grenades all over the world. We were about 18 countries internationally at that point. And it would do one of two things. It would build up enough gas and crack and kind of ooze all over, which was the better solution. That way I just had to pay for a purse or replace a shelving. Or it would build enough gas and not crack, but you'd open the top of it and the thing would shoot across the room like a bullet. So that was, another one of those things in forks in life. And that disaster happened. Our manufacturer replaced all the stuff, but it was a major hit to our reputation and so forth. Cash got tight. That's what forced me to learn how to do outsourcing. And that was back 7 or 8 years ago. I'm back to similar to the COVID situation we're all in. Things got tight. I had to make cash stretch. I'd always heard about this outsourcing thing and finally got into it. And I said, man, this is how we got to make our business survive. And so
you were just kind of like, hey, I gotta be lean. I got to operate with very little overhead. This was a solution to cut overhead.
Well, it was partly cost. I mean, we actually kept most of our staff, but it was more about how do I do more innovative, creative things with the marketing efforts that we do. So I went back to my marketing director and I said, hey, this is all the stuff you've been wanting to do, right? I mean, I remember when I first learned about it, a buddy of mine told me, he said, hey man, I just got this website built for my dad's wedding venue. And I was like, that's amazing. He's like, yeah, I paid $500 for it. I was like, what? I said, I just paid $5,000 and it took 7 months to get this website and it doesn't look as good as yours. And that's when I went onto these platforms like Elance and Odesk, which were the big ones back in the day before they merged and became Upwork. And it opened, I was like, there's this whole gig economy in the world that I can leverage with great talent, but because of the US dollar, your dollars will stretch a lot more for the type of work. And then I figured out all kinds of growth hacking stuff, like how you could have, outsourced, resources, log into my sales reps' LinkedIn accounts and do outbound lead generation and messaging, how they could, get websites done, how they could do brochures, how they could even do outbound calling. When I had a group that would do massive outbound calling and lead generation for the dental and beauty market. So long story short, it's just that's what forced me to learn how to do that world. And we ultimately ended up exiting, kind of selling that business to our manufacturer. Took a bit of a black eye with all the mess that we had. So we didn't make a big sum on it, but it was the education I got through that journey. So I had that knowledge set, and it was actually my forum in EO back, when I joined, 8 years ago. They're like, Brad, you become the guy on all this outsourcing stuff. Why don't you make a business out of it? So first couple of years, I just did a lot of speaking, and I would do consulting with companies. I'd help go in and figure out what their constraint points are and see what their challenges. And then I basically referred them to other companies that I had vetted, groups in India or Philippines or, all parts of the world. But then I realized I felt we could fill a niche that wasn't being filled by providing full-time, fully vetted and trained VAs, specifically from the Philippines, where you don't have the English, issue, and they have a completely Americanized culture. So we decided to launch our own operation. And based on my own personal VA that I first hired in the Philippines, who blew my mind on her capability and performance, and that young woman is now my chief operating officer over 300 people. I just consistently found people that exceeded expectations. So if you had set a high bar in the Philippines, the right kind of people, you can get unbelievably talented, sharp folks. We can pay them great money. We've hired them as full-time employees, provide health insurance and benefits. And then it's a big cost advantage for our clients. So that's the space that we're in. And I still do a lot of speaking and talking on it. I love sharing the education, whether people use us or just engage this. It changes the life of an entrepreneur when they learn how to leverage this world, because you can do things you never would have been able to do.
Yeah. I love your, your podcast, Automate and Delegate What You Should Not Be Doing. And we run into this with accountants all the time, is they're doing too many things that they really shouldn't be doing. And it's a growth stopper. It just stops you in your tracks. So what are some ways, what are some ways to help create a plan if people aren't sure what they want to outsource or what they want to automate? Like, how do you get them started?
Well, it's, and I share this actually when I do speaking, for entrepreneur organizations. I kind of have a little worksheet we go through. And I say, before I talk about a thing about outsourcing or any of that, we got to get clarity of kind of where your constraint points are, and really kind of get a handle on that. And a lot of people just going through that exercise, if they never outsource a thing, that they find lots of value. And to simplify it, I say it kind of falls in, in two buckets, which is, what are the things that you're doing that aren't the best use of your time? I know it's a super simple question, and sometimes the simplest questions are the best ones. And really take time to audit yourself and just eat whatever you use, whether you use to-do list, whether you use a Google Doc or what have you, but for a week or so, just audit. Every time you sneeze, document it and estimate how many hours per month you're spending on that task, right? For example, like people put on there responding to LinkedIn requests, right? So I'm the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and I'm still managing responses to my LinkedIn requests and to connecting and replying when people message me and so forth. And people are amazed when they go through that exercise and they estimate how many hours per month. They're like, wow, I actually spend 4 or 5 hours per month doing X. And before you know it, in 160 hour, assuming a 40-hour work week, which no entrepreneur works at, but all of a sudden you're spending 20 hours doing stuff that isn't the best use of your time, that frankly isn't rocket science. And it can be documented and transitioned to a virtual resource in the process, where you can get a higher return on your time. And for most of us as entrepreneurs and business owners, it's out doing these kind of things like you and I are doing. It's, out speaking, it's out closing deals, business development. I mean, I'm working on a national franchise opportunity right now, not dealing with the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
And the second bucket is what's on the radar that you're not getting to due to time, money, or knowledge constraints. And that's that second list. What are the things that I've been meaning to do? God, man, we got all this raw footage that I've been of testimonials that we just have never gotten on our website because I know it's going to cost me $1,000 to get that done. Well, it doesn't, right? We do that all day long for like $40. Take raw footage, turn a testimonial video, putting logos in the front and the back end of music. But what are the things that you've been meaning to do in your business? Even if it's like, cleaning up your QuickBooks, right? Chasing down receivables, that you're not getting, cleaning up your CRM. There's loads of marketing things like posting consistently on your social media channels. And like you and I were talking about, even like having a podcast, like what you have, like when we do our podcast, we send this like full package that people can promote to their audience of guests that I have. And I was just sharing with you how that's super cheap and easy to do. We have a VA that creates all these thumbnails for LinkedIn, for Facebook, for Instagram to make it super easy for a guest to share. So when you look at that second bucket, what are the things on the radar that I haven't gotten to due to either I don't have time, it's going to cost too much, or I just don't have the knowledge to do it?
Yeah.
And I highly encourage people that have staff is ask those 2 questions of your employees as well. Send those 2 questions and say, hey, you know what? In a week from now, we're going to have a 3-hour meeting and I want you to come with your list.
Yep.
And I can't tell you, Brandon, how many people and hundreds of clients and companies I've told, from small up to this gargantuan playground manufacturer in Canada I just talked to. They did that exercise and it is amazing what comes out.
Yeah.
And again, if you never outsourced a thing, the stuff that people will share, like Johnny who's been a marketing coordinator for 7 years, been working with us, all of a sudden he's like, yeah, here's some on the radar. I know it could add a huge value to the company that we're not doing. We're like, well, Johnny, why didn't you speak up? Well, you never asked me before, So it creates a good foundation to figure out where the constraint points, where's there missing opportunity in terms of dollars and resources that then you can start breaking that down, prioritizing that you can outsource.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a great strategic exercise to do. We have a similar tool. We call it our 3-bucket tool. And we just tell people like, all right, what do you know you want to keep doing? That's the first bucket. What do you want to delegate one day? And what do you want to delegate now? So we kind of have like, I want to get rid of this right away. I know I want to get rid of this one day, but I don't have anybody to do it. And then you give it with the team and you find, somebody on your team might want to be doing the things that you want to delegate one day. And there's a match right there immediately within your team. It's so simple, but I think we get caught in the day to day and we don't do that stuff. We don't step back and do that stuff very often, or as often as we should.
Well, it's just not fun. No entrepreneur, again, looking at the profiles of most entrepreneurs, we're sales and marketing people. We like energy. We like endorphin hits. We like quick wins. We like that kind of stuff. Sitting down and mapping out the things that constrain my time is not at the top of the list when our feet are around in the morning, right? Nor is documenting processes and protocols and so forth. But you and I both know the entrepreneurs that are most successful and businesses are most successful are process machines.
Yeah.
It sets you free.
Well, you get to a point if you're growing, if you're scaling, you get to a point where it's just all insanity because you're doing so many of these things. It's creeping into all your personal time, and if you're not careful, you're going to burn yourself out if you don't get some help.
No, you got to make that. I mean, that's even before those 2 things. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that. Before you start that, is you have to have a real conversation with yourself and say, do I really want to scale and grow? Or do I want to stay in this kind of hamster wheel? That the old book, it's cliche, but E-Myth, right? I probably both know the classic. Am I going to be the technician and live in the business every single day? Or am I going to get out and grow it and scale it? And you got to be honest and hold yourself accountable. And a lot of people, they kind of lie to themselves about that. And part of it though, too, Brandon, is I just find from a pure body chemistry standpoint, I mean, cortisol is that chemical that dumps into your system during fight or flight, right? And it's powerful. I got a chance to work with some guys that were launching a web-based program that their mom had developed for children with learning disabilities. And so I got a chance to do a deep dive understanding because a lot of what drives ADHD and some of the behavior and so forth is cortisol, chemical in the body. And I ended up making this connection to entrepreneurship because so many entrepreneurs get stuck in that state of fight or flight, and cortisol is just dumping into their system. And it's tough to get out of that loop. Like you are chemically ingrained. It's like, why do people check their phone 48 times per day? Like it just becomes a habit, and it's just chemically, they almost kind of get addicted to just this fight or flight. It's always a firefight. I wake up every day and it's like, whoo, 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 whoo. And all of a sudden it's 4:30 and like, you have not moved a single strategic thing. All you've done is tread water. And unless people make the commitment of, I'm going to block my calendar out. I know it's going to cost me some sales because I'm the only person being the salesman for my team, but I'm going to block out from 8 to 12 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm going to work on my business and move some of these things forward. They get that and it's stuck in that, that routine and don't ever break out.
That's interesting. It's interesting that people have to be honest with themselves about whether they truly want to scale or not. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Like, do you think people, is it people are lying to themselves that they don't want to scale, or they think they want to scale, but they really don't want to scale badly enough to actually do it?
They're not hungry enough. I mean, there's that inflection point, and there's tons and tons of the hustle folks out there, right? And they're the ones that'll tweet like crazy, and they'll like everything that Gary V posts and so forth and what have you. And they kind of have in this mind that they want to be an entrepreneur and scale, but they're just not willing to do the discipline, the work, the idea. These are what I call digital hoarders, right? They opt into every single download on every single website. They come into their website. They go to every conference imaginable because they live off the oxygen of the excitement of the energy. But now when it's just you in a room and your computer after that big conference and you got to do the work, then that's where, let me go sign up for another conference. Let me go get another webcast. Let me go listen to this next podcast and let me get my endorphin hits back up. And then it deflates again, right? That's the thing I love about, like with EO and similar organizations is you got a group of accountability folks that are going to keep you moving forward. And that's one of the biggest things I would encourage with anybody is, if you're struggling with that rut of getting growth is get, even if it's just a neighbor or a fellow friend of yours that's thinking about being an entrepreneur, and you just set up accountability, the two of you of a weekly call, because when you have a third party you have to be accountable to, you will move things forward, as cliche as it is, and things you put down. So
it's human nature. It's human nature.
Exactly.
Well, so speaking of scaling, I mean, you've had amazingly rapid growth, 300 staff under 2 years. Like, what are some of the resources, tools, and strategies you've personally used to scale?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm kind of one of those males, and maybe it's because a lot of the amazing female influence I had in my life kind of grew up. My mom is kind of the oldest of 4 women, and so I had a bunch of aunts kind of growing up and 2 younger sisters, and I'm the first dude to like stop and ask directions. Like if I'm lost somewhere, like I'm pulling over a gas station, like where am I? Tell me where to go, right? I don't need to beat my head against the wall. If there's proven frameworks and stuff that's out there, like let me leverage them, and I think you're the same mindset, like with what you use in your process. And it's the mindset of most people that join EO as well so I try to lean on proven systems and processes out there. And part of that is a lot of my failures I've experienced in the last 20 years as an entrepreneur, what worked, what didn't work. But using things like EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, that create a framework for us to develop our goals and our cadence and our structure. I mean, it's absolutely, because so many businesses just haphazardly move down the road, right? You have an owner, you have the CEO, whatever, you got sales staff and so forth. And there's no structured cadence to quarterly goal development. What are we doing? Taking 3 to 4. I mean, we spend 4 hours a quarter sitting down and deciding where are we and where do we want to go? Who's going to own what? Come up with it, define the metrics. And then every week we have a meeting that says, where are you on your metric or not? And, that's how you move the needle, forward. So EOS is a huge one for us. And actually our EOS implementer. So I have a whole, our whole corporation is in the Philippines. So I incorporated there. And leveraging the power of EO, actually, I reached out because I wanted an implementer from the Philippines that could connect with my team there from a cultural standpoint. And I hired an EO Philippines member. Phenomenal job of doing our EOS implementation.
Wow.
And she had us as a management team read Jim Collins' Good to Great. And a lot of people that are listening to this, like, oh yeah, old Jim Collins, Good to Great. No, that's a great one. But I asked most people that asked it, I'm like, well, what are the 3 takeaways you took? Nobody remembers a thing from it a lot of times, right? And a lot of times it depends on where they read it. So I read it kind of in my late 20s, early 30s. And I was like, oh, this is great. But I couldn't relate because I didn't have a business that I could apply some of this stuff, at least I felt at that point. And call it maturity or what have you. And at the same time, being president for EO and so forth. But man, we read that together as a management team, and just the fundamental principles in that are timeless. They're not short-term tips or tricks. It's disciplined thought, disciplined action, disciplined people. The flywheel concept, the hedgehog concept, what can you be the best in the world at and get crystal clear on it? Bullets before cannonballs, do incremental, constant, low cost, low distraction, low risk testing in your business at all times. Level 5, leadership. The difference between level 4 and level 5 is humility and humbleness as a CEO. And I constantly try and follow that path myself. Right people, right seats, which we know. Fanatical about the people you're hiring in your organization. Don't cut corners. Don't allow the non-people that meet your bar to be in your organization. So I just, reading that together, my wife lives up in Michigan. So during COVID, we were driving back and forth, and that was my time to listen to audiobooks. And man, I just binged all of his books again. Great by Choice, Built to Last. And a lot of people know on his website, he has this thing called the map where he's consolidated all the best practices from all his books into one kind of little visual that's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
And he wrote basically a book after. It's a very short one. It's only an hour and a half listen. Highly recommend anybody on here to check out. It's called Turning the Flywheel, which is basically a summary of all the key points from all of his books. And it's a part of my vocabulary every single day. I probably say hedgehog concept about 15 times a week with our team. I talk about turning the flywheel. And part of what he talked about is the 1,400 companies that they assessed in good to great. There was only 11 out of 1,400 that met the criteria that went from good to great and surpassed. And, the key things, it's very rare, to kind of see those things that people, are doing. And so we try to follow a lot of those frameworks in our process, and none of it's overnight success. A lot of it, the turning the flywheel concept, is just doing steady, incremental, consistent process, the 20-mile march.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you wake up one day, 10 years later, and amazing things. You not only has the company gone a long way, but your own leadership has evolved just by implementing that stuff. And you don't even feel that evolution until, I don't know, until you stop one day and look back and go, wow, I've really, our whole team has moved, that's
like the 10-year overnight success people talk about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what he talks about in Good to Great. It's like, well, those last 10 years we were moving forward. It was just this inflection point where everything kind of started really catching, and the flywheel started moving on its own without you having to push it. And then it just continues, with momentum.
Yeah. Which is fun. And I think when you scale really rapidly, I would imagine you feel those levels faster. Would you say that's the upside of scaling really fast? Is there a fun upside to scaling fast, or is it just, does it feel like a big challenge to scale? Like, what are the fun parts of scaling?
I mean, to be honest, in my industry, it's the most aligned I've ever been. Not that I didn't enjoy kind of, helping whiten people's teeth in my last business, right? But for me personally, it's just, it's seeing the impact we're having on both sides of the equation in our business. On one side, we're creating jobs for these, employees of ours in the Philippines, creating opportunities and income that they never would have been able to kind of realize otherwise, creating flexibility to spend time with their families and so forth they wouldn't be able to do. Just creating a career path. We have part of our core values is we want people to reach a 2.0 version of themselves. And so we're fanatical about culture. We invest in our people in the Philippines and culture and events, and showing them that we appreciate who they are. During Christmas, we couldn't have a Christmas party this past year. So our management team, we hand delivered Christmas baskets to over 200 employees to their individual homes all over the South Philippines. We're really aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations. So once a quarter, our team chooses something that they care about, they're passionate about as it relates to humanity and the environment. And so the last one they chose was SDG 15, Life on Land. And so our team planted 100 trees in kind of a low, foliage area, in the Philippines. So one side, the fun part is just growing this fast and creating these income opportunities and career paths. And some of our VAs leave us, longer term, if they got another path they want to go down, but we were the stepping stone to kind of help them make that path. And we create a framework so that we make a very easy transition. Then the other side, our clients, I can't tell you, it's amazing to see the stories of the impacts of our clients that you helped us survive COVID without this. We had one client that went from 50 plus employees down to just his VA is all he could afford left with us. And his VA that he had helped him come up with an idea to launch a new business that he never would have been able to do if he didn't have that VA at an affordable rate, that he could, get through. So it's, so that's the fun part is, helping businesses and the impact that we're changing their lives. And because that's my passion. I don't want to work with Fortune 1000 and Fortune 5000 companies. The small to medium business in America is the lifeblood of our economy. That's what I grew up in my family and what I'm passionate about. And that's the niche that we're servicing. So it's fun seeing kind of both sides of the equation, being serviced and supported.
Yeah. Yeah. it's interesting outsourcing. So I never really thought too much about it until I became president of EO. And as you know, EO launched just recently this VA program, and I'm beyond impressed. Like, it's just amazing how responsive, how helpful, how just how reliable this person is. And um, I know a lot of people have doubts though about outsourcing. It's sort of this, I guess for me, it was a little bit of a mystery. I didn't have any experience with it, but what do people say? Look, what are their obstacles to doing it? Why? What are the doubts or concerns that you encounter?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the same ones I had when I first started, and people still have to this day. When it comes to it. First thing I would say is, and I call them DFCs, doubt, fears, and concerns, right? As far as relating to it, and depending on what their personal experience has been, what they've heard other people have, depending on how they've engaged it. One thing I'll say that I didn't mention before too is that on the surface, when it comes to outsourcing, there's a lot of people when they look at our company, they're like, "Oh, you're shipping jobs overseas, right? You're taking away jobs from workers and so forth." I'll tell you, first of all, if anybody has an employee or performer that isn't performing at all and they're not delivering value to the business, they need to go regardless if you outsource or not. But the vast majority of what I see is for owners that we provide VAs for, or for their senior staff, it's about elevating everybody to their highest return on time. If you've got a great strategic thinker and a good hard worker that's a fit culture of your business, you do not want to lose that person. What you want to do is then wake up every single day, their feet hitting the ground, doing the stuff they love doing, where they can add the most value, and transition stuff off their plate that isn't adding value. And in that situation, 1 + 1 = 5. I've seen so many times a VP of marketing all of a sudden is delivering 5x, and then all of a sudden they get a VA and they're doing 10x because they can get to what they focus on. So just like to share that misnomer when it comes to outsourcing is that's one of the things concerns people have is, oh, I'm gonna have to get rid of my employees or I'm replacing. No, it's about elevating those people, their highest return on time. And if you're doing it right, the value that they can bring, I mean, they land one additional client and it pays for a VA for the entire year, right? If they're in sales and marketing related. The other thing people have concerns about is, as far as turnover issues, right? They work with a company or they go hire someone, then all of a sudden they disappear, or, they get a better opportunity and leave. And that is an issue that happens. And part of that is making sure when you're going to hire someone, whether you try and work with someone on a platform like Upwork or Fiverr, use a company like ours, or a contracting group, is they're committed to working with you kind of long-term of what you're wanting to do. And that's why, I mean, with our company, we choose to hire them as full-time employees. We don't hire them as contractors. So that we hire them as full-time employees in the Philippines so that when we make sure they're committed to this as a career path long-term, and then all of a sudden they're not going to see 50% more per hour or 50 cents more dollar per hour more on another job platform, and they're going to jump. So turnover is a challenge. Just be very upfront with anybody you're going to hire, whether you choose a firm to work with or otherwise, is how do you treat your people? What do you have in place to retain that talent to make sure I'm going to have this person with me long-term? And so that's a big focus we've done. I mean, we've been fortunate. We got, I think close to 90%, retention.
That's great.
Time zones is always an issue. People are like, what about time zones? Well, like in the Philippines, we're in Eastern time here in Atlanta and Charleston. It's not as big of an issue as people think. Using tools like screencast-o-matic and Loom, it allows you to record. And a big thing now with COVID is asynchronous communication. So use those tools, let you record your screen, your voice, and your mouse. You can make these little videos to shoot them over, they can watch them. Because a lot of the work that they're doing can be done at any time. If you need somebody to absolutely work your local hours, there are absolutely people that'll do that. And we have clients that request that and we recruit for it. But a lot of times, a lot of the work they're doing, and they can work kind of hybrid hours. That's what, like my personal VA now, because I lost JSL because she runs our company now. But my personal VA, she and I are on the same, we have kind of live chat if we need to up till about 12 p.m. my time. Then she goes to sleep. I finish working. Then when I'm sleeping, I wake up and my inbox is, full of completed tasks. So it's a bit of a hybrid situation.
Yeah.
Security is another thing people ask about. And VPNs are the quickest answer for that. Using VPN logins, whether it's AWS or VMware, is a lot. Our largest client has 60 VAs with us, and we're doing loan documentation processing and a bunch of accounting, financial type of work. And so we're using VMware as the platform we log in. So it's kind of a secure environment. So I mentioned a bunch more on our website people can go to if they want to see, but those are some of the things that come up.
I've watched your video. You've got I guess it's maybe is it about a 20-minute video that you have, or you used to post it on your website about just, it was on location in the Philippines, and it was a really cool video. I don't know if that's still live or not, but I did watch it. I think after you came to Nerve, because we had EO Nerve here in Charleston, and I watched that video. It was really good.
Yeah, it's a quick short tip for anybody. That's one of the best things we've ever done for our sales process. Is that if you go to outsourceaccess.com and you click on get a virtual assistant at the top, you'll see a video there. It's about 25 minutes. And people are like, oh, it's 25 minutes. But that video, I go through and answer. I start off with raw footage in the Philippines, go behind the scenes of our team, how it all works. And then very importantly, so I shoot from the waist up and I'm standing beside a TV screen like you can see, and I go through and explain our entire process step by step. All the questions that every single person asks at the front, instead of having a person tied up on the phone answering those questions, they watch that video. I deliver it with the right energy and engagement. So if they do want to have a phone call after it to learn more about what we do, all those questions have been answered. And you can just focus on their business.
Yeah. That's the one I watched. That was a good video. I saw that. Yeah. Well, I mean, for firms that are still kind of new at being virtual, what's your biggest bit of advice, for them to be able to make a stable virtual setting for their teams? You're talking about some of these tools.
I mean, for them to do to do their side correctly, as far as like, you're asking as far as with clients being able to do.
Yeah, just like with COVID. Successful. With COVID, everybody's had to have their own teams virtualized. I mean, you've got tons of experience, working with virtual teams. Like what are some of the, successful tips for that?
Well, just your technology framework's got to be dialed in, as a lot of people have learned, if they had or didn't had it, it became very apparent. So, I mean, crazy enough, we've grown as fast and I haven't been able to be there at all. I've been to the Philippines one time when I went there first to kick this thing off, and I haven't been able to go back. So I've had to purely run this organization and manage it, virtually.
Wow.
So having a obviously goes without saying, a web-based, highly organized document or management structure, whether you use Google Docs, whether you use Office 365. It goes without saying you need to use it. But the other thing I'll say is be disciplined about your file naming systems and processes, right? Oh, yeah. So many times in shared drives and so forth, we actually have a protocol document of how folders get named, how files get named, and so forth. Because so many times when people are working virtually, they just create folders and they drop a file in, there's no consistent naming architecture, and then just it becomes this cobbled mess. So
yeah, I've experienced that.
Being disciplined is probably everybody has Google Docs or Office 365, that they're using, but just create a little one pager of a file naming protocol, so that you're on the same page consistently. And also, if you're ever going to search for that document, that, if you search a certain term, the document you're looking for will kind of come up. And then having a web-based project management, tool of some kind. For those of you who haven't used them, whether it's Asana, Basecamp, Teamwork is honestly one of my favorite ones out there. It's an Irish-based company. They have thought through every nuance when it comes to web-based project management. It's called teamwork.com. And the cool thing is they have a version of Slack built right into the platform. So you basically get all the benefits of it's not exactly, but it's pretty close to it. That's a whole chat platform for your whole organization built right into it. You can right click on a chat and turn it into a task immediately. And they've got Gantt charts and workflows and all that kind of stuff, but it lets your whole world live in the cloud environment and workflows and so forth. So it's not lost in a zillion emails back and forth and just, spreadsheets, but having that in place. I'm sure you guys use something.
We use Basecamp, and we like the way we like the client communication aspect of Basecamp, but we've been looking at something that's a little bit more robust. And we were looking at Asana right now, but we're considering other options. So I'll have to check out this Teamwork.
Asana is actually one we used initially. It also depends on personal preference, right? Trello is about little moving cards. So some people like that. Asana's got a very visually attractive, a lot of great functionality. But one of the things with Asana is it had an integration with Slack, but not their own version of it. But yeah, I definitely check out Teamwork if you guys are looking for a more robust, solution.
Yeah.
So organized file systems, project management, web-based type of platforms. As I mentioned earlier, screencast-o-matic or Loom are two of the most powerful tools. If you take nothing else from this podcast today, go check out screencast-o-matic or Loom. You'll use it for communication in every way imaginable in your business. It's amazing even for doing sales proposals, because the biggest problem people have when they're communicating with a virtual staff is getting stuff out of their head to them, right? And they're trying to, hey, Brandon, let's hop on a live screen share and let me show you how to do this. Or I'm going to kind of, take a bunch of screenshots and then do arrows and text boxes to explain to you how to do this thing. With screencast-o-matic and Loom, you just click, it records your screen, your voice, and your mouse. As soon as you're done, you click a button, it uploads it to the web, has the video file, and they don't have to download any software. They just watch it just like they're watching a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Incredibly invaluable. And the last thing I'll say is just from a culture standpoint, that's something we've been huge on in our business is keeping people engaged. And, even little things like we have a graphic that anytime it's anybody's birthday, like our marketing department takes a picture of them, they create this whole graphic and we post it on our master chat channel and everybody congratulates them, happy birthday and so forth. So when you can't get together in person, like just little things like that, or if somebody does a great job and I hear about it from a client, we have a CEO applause badge. And so it's a little badge that I post as an image and say, hey, so-and-so, you did a great job. Want to share this. So just little things you can do, and then being purpose driven, like I said, like the United Nations stuff we're doing, whatever you're doing locally, having some purpose element that's bigger than just profit with your business, it keeps everybody aligned.
Yeah, the engagement thing is big. I just kind of went through an exercise about think about people, either clients or team members. Think about those that are really highly engaged and think about those that maybe aren't. And think about what their behavior is. What is the difference in someone who's highly engaged versus someone who's not? And just bringing more awareness to engagement really kind of gets some thinking going.
Absolutely. It's
so
another tool we just started using is called Culture Index. It's actually a framework that you use to assess people.
Yeah, I've heard of that before.
It's amazing. It's another one of those proven frameworks like EOS, like Good to Great. So Culture Index, it's rippling through EO now as well. Our facilitator, it's going to be Sumit out of Nashville area. And we actually have an SAP in Atlanta, Nathan Hightower, that does it, but it's, there's DISC and there's Colby and there's all these different assessments, but with Culture Index, it has people take an assessment of kind of where they are and how they're going to be a fit in the organization. And it has a consultant that helps you kind of implement it and so forth. And it's been invaluable. I mean, when we tested it, we had him take a couple of people and people that we've been working for a year, and he never knew these people at all. They took the assessment. And he said, let me see, this probably describes this person. And I mean, to a T, described exactly who they were.
Yeah.
It's been helpful.
Yeah. I found Colby's pretty accurate too. We actually use Colby for all our hiring.
And, those are great tools.
Yeah. Well, it's, how do you measure capacity for team members? So getting people just kind of understand what they're capable of in general, or what are some strategies that you've used before to kind of manage team capacity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an organic thing that kind of evolves a bit because, when you're having somebody absorb something new, it takes more time initially while the learning curve is there, right? While they're learning and so forth. And that's why we're huge on, again, those screencast-o-matic recordings, because we create a playbook from day one. So anytime somebody starts working and one of our VAs works with a client, we have them do these screencast recordings and then we save them in a Google Doc playbook, And we also use a tool called Trainual, which is another one I would recommend with virtual teams. There's a tool called trainual.com that lets you do web-based kind of workflows and processes.
Training rule?
Trainual, Trainual.com.
UAL. Okay. Trainual. Okay. Got you.
It's an incredible web-based. We use it internally for everything, for all of our training, all of our workflows, all of our onboarding. It basically, if you want a tool that helps you guide through how to create, documented processes and workflows in your business, it's fantastic. So that's part of, the beginning stage is figuring out what's the learning curve piece, how much time it takes. What took 10 hours to learn now only takes 4 hours to maintain each month, right? We use this tool called a Time Doctor, which actually does kind of full screen capture of kind of the work that they're doing, and also they can categorize the work that they're doing by category. And so at the end of the week, you can kind of say, hey, they spent X number of hours in this type of category, this category, this category. And just see, is there any outliers or things that are absorbing more time than that they shouldn't be taking on? Because there's two buckets. There's things that are recurring tasks that, are always going to take 4 hours every single week. And then there's things that are project based that kind of just bubble up, kind of as needed. So it's about just having an ongoing conversation about the capacity, what they're doing, giving feedback. Because sometimes staff just won't tell you. You know, they'll put in the extra hours and just push to make it happen, and they're overworked, and they really need a release valve of help, but they just haven't shared it.
Yeah.
So I would use those tools to track and see what they're working on, and then just have a consistent monthly conversation at a minimum of, hey, where are you spending your time? I'm looking at kind of your tracking here, and it looks like you're spending 45% of your time in this area, and you should be spending 10%. What's going on that's causing that?
Yeah. Well, you're giving us like a whole bunch of text, like a whole tech stack for managing a virtual firm. This is really cool. We're going to have to put that in our, in our post, all these links to these companies, because I think CPAs are going to love all these links.
Yeah, they'll put it on there. And we always set up we have an email address we set up for any speaking or podcast I do, just tools at outsourceaccess.com. And you don't have to write anything in the body of it. If you just send an email to tools at Outsource Access, whatever email, and just put in the subject line, accounting podcast. We'll just make it simple, right?
Okay.
Accounting podcast. It's the only accounting one that I've done here recently. But if we get that, as you can imagine, a VA, and we'll send you kind of just a great goodie bag of a list of tools, some recordings of some webinars that I've done with visuals. And one actually we just recently launched that I spoke for a podcast expo of how to launch and build your own podcast using VAs. So we'll send you a whole list of resources there.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that, Brad. Well, so I know you mentioned Good to Great. Is there another book that you might want to recommend to our listeners? Anything you're reading currently?
Another one I'd recommend is Bezonomics. That kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with it. So a lot of people maybe don't know that. So when Jeff Bezos was growing and expanding Amazon, at least according to kind of this book, is that one of his key inflection points is when he flew Jim Collins out to his management team and had him help them shape their own flywheel. And if any of you want to Google the Amazon flywheel, you'll find a zillion images out there of how they reduced it to 4 key things about what helps them maintain incredible growth and expansion. Maintain low prices, drives more volume, attracts more buyers to the platform, and it just repeats and it just continues to cycle. There's a lot more complexity to it, but I learned about that. So Bezonomics, so my whole forum actually just listened to it, and we actually had an exercise with each of our forum mates. We had to present our own flywheel to our forum. It was one of the best exercises we've ever done with our forum. So we all kind of revisited, Good to Great of what the definition of the hedgehog concept is, which is the intersection of what you're best in the world at, what drives your economic engine, and what you love doing, and then creating a flywheel around it. And but Bezonomics, all of us know Amazon is pervasive in our life. They're taking over the planet, right? And so the author just kind of goes through the whole narrative of Amazon, how they've built, how they've grown, what they've done, and all the philosophies, interviewing tons of managers and so forth. That just talks about their machine and the philosophies that they've used. Some agree with it, some don't, right? And I definitely don't agree with some of the things and approaches, but
what we talk about scaling fast. Amazon, I wonder if that's one of the fastest scaling companies in the history of world history. I would think maybe it's the fastest, if not one of.
Yeah, there's actually one of those like animated GIFs that I saw that kind of looks at the last 30 years and it ranks all the richest people in the world, right? And it's kind of this dynamic thing that as the years go, you see all these like numbers go up and down, and all of a sudden you see like 2014, 15, and Jeff Bezos goes, like this in terms of, net worth. So, he's, so if you don't believe in anything else when it comes to Good to Great and flywheel, that was one of the key elements that Bezos, he took that concept from Collins and just turned it into a machine of their philosophy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Brad, this has been a wonderful conversation. You've given our listeners a lot of valuable information. All these links are going to be, I know people are going to be interested in all these links and tools. So what's the best way for them to follow or connect with you?
Yeah, like I said, if anybody that's interested and wants to kind of a list of a bunch of tools and resources, get your phone or whatever in front of you, just, send an email to tools at outsourceaccess.com and just put accounting podcast in the subject line. You don't have to write anything in the body at all. And that goes in, as you can imagine, I have a VA that gets those, and we'll send you a bunch of just great resources and tools that we've aggregated that are really helpful for our audience. And then you should visit outsourceaccess.com. You can kind of go and check it out, and got a bunch of educational content there. And if you want to see that video that we talked about, where I kind of walk through our whole process, just click on get a virtual assistant at the top. It'll kind of navigate you through it. AutomateDelegate.com is our podcast, and we bring on guests. It's only about 20-25 minutes, and it's very high takeaway. We interview and listen to what are 3 big constraint points and 3 tools that the guests use to overcome them. If anybody's a part of an organization, I speak for tons of business organizations. So bradstevenstraining.com is my website for the speaking that I do. So if that's of interest, love to chat with you.
You're a busy guy, Brad. I don't know how you do it all. But
well,
I appreciate
300 VAs that help.
Yeah, that's right. You got a big team, man. That's right. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on our podcast and sharing all this. This has been really great. And yeah, go check out that video. His video about outsourcing. It's really well done video. Y'all did a great job with that.
No, I appreciate it. It's the beginning part of our process, and last tool I'll leave with everybody. If you're not using an automatic booking tool, look at Calendly.com. Instead of playing that game back and forth of trying to like book and so forth, Calendly logs into your calendar, you create links, and then all a person has to do is click on the link and they can book with you. It eliminates hours of time of playing back and forth. And in terms of your sales process, equip your sales team with Calendly instead of them emailing and saying, hey, tell me a good time we can talk next week. People lose sales all day long, not because they're not interested, because you made it difficult for them to go to their calendar and give you a bunch of bullet points of when they're available. There's a bunch of them out there, but if nothing else, try Calendly. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. All right, Brad. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. If you like what you heard today, please follow us so that you can get updates when new episodes are released, and share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. You can also follow Poe Group Advisors on social media. Please visit our website for more information at pogroupadvisors.com.